They came from the sea, broad-shouldered giants, their ships slicing through the grey waves off Scotland's Western Isles, born of Viking raiders and hardened Highlanders. These men weren't fighting for glory, or gods, or home. They were fighting for gold. They were called Gallowglass, a name that would echo in fear across medieval Ireland for over 3 centuries. Clad in chainmail and armed with two-handed axes, the Gallowglass were unlike anything Ireland had ever seen. Towering over most native fighters, they looked more like beasts of war than men, mercenaries bred for bloodshed. Each one chosen for his size, his strength, and most of all, his utter lack of mercy. They were not loyal to any king, not bound by clan or flag. They were loyal only to the coin, and to death if it came wearing a price. In the 13th century, Norse Gaelic clans began to abandon their windswept homes in the Hebrides and the western coasts of Scotland. Their bloodlines traced to Viking invaders who had intermarried with Scottish tribes. With Norse ruthlessness and Highland endurance running through their veins, they set their sights southward, on a land in constant chaos, medieval Ireland. Ireland at the time was a patchwork of warring Gaelic clans, fractured kingdoms, and feuding lords. Alliances shifted like the tides, and blood flowed for land, pride, and cattle. Into this turmoil came the Gallowglass, professional killers with no stake in the conflict, but every reason to fight. They didn't come as conquerors. They came as weapons for hire. Clans and lords quickly recognized their value. For the right fee, these armored juggernauts could tip the scales of a war. An 80-man Gallowglass battle could do the damage of hundreds. They were often contracted for 3 months or indefinitely if the gold kept flowing. In one chilling tale from 1316, a Gaelic chieftain's daughter hired a unit of Gallowglass to assassinate her own cousin. They completed the job with clinical brutality, collected the blood money, and vanished into the hills, ready for the next contract. When the Irish hired Gallowglass, they weren't just buying muscle, they were unleashing chaos. The mercenaries stormed rival territories, torched villages, and slaughtered any resistance. They guarded fleeing lords, hauled back plundered cattle, and left only ash behind. Their tactics were scorched earth, and they didn't fear death. Some even welcomed it. Before the Gallowglass arrived, Irish warfare was dominated by quick raids, fast-moving light infantry called kerns, and mounted nobles charging into brief skirmishes. But the Gallowglass changed everything. Their shock tactics and heavy armor forced Ireland's battles to evolve from scattered clashes to full-scale bloodbaths. When England entered the scene in 1169, its kings sought to turn Ireland into a subjugated colony. But while the English gained ground, capturing cities and forcing laws on the Irish, what they didn't expect was a resistance as savage and professional as the Gallowglass. By the 15th century, even the English feared these men. One legend tells of 1423, when the powerful O'Donnell and O'Neill clans rallied in the north and began a bold march south to reclaim territory from the English. With them marched the McSweeney Gallowglass, led by a warrior named Mulmurray McSweeney, a name still whispered in Ulster folklore. On the eve of battle, the Gallowglass reveled by the fire, drinking, playing cards, shouting their oaths to the wind, not in fear, but in joy. For them, death was just another form of payment. At dawn, the clash began. Irish kerns launched the first attack, flinging spears and retreating. Then came the bagpipes, and the Gallowglass surged forward. Their axes weren't weapons. They were cleaving machines, built to break bone and armor in a single swing. The English ranks crumbled. Knights fell like wheat, and in the center of the field, McSweeney himself struck down the English commander. The Irish negotiated peace, backed by the terrible force of men who, by then, were legend. As time passed, more Irish joined their ranks. Native-born warriors of impressive stature were welcomed and trained. Gallowglass became both a role and a reputation. To be called one meant you were a war machine, unshakable, untamed. But loyalty remained fluid. Though most Gallowglass fought for Gaelic lords, some were hired by the English crown. And when the coin was right, a Gallowglass would kill his own kin without a blink. They had no creed but combat. Their ruthlessness knew no border. Civilians, monks, even children were sometimes caught in their wake. In truth, they were knights without chivalry, honored by fear, not by code. By the 16th century, as Henry VIII declared himself King of Ireland, the island boiled with rebellion. Irish earls resisted the crown's total conquest, and once again, they called on the Gallowglass. In 1582, one of the most haunting tales unfolded. The Earl of Desmond, Gerald Fitzgerald, was gravely wounded during a skirmish with English troops. His escape was possible only because 80 Gallowglass warriors held the line in a bog, fighting to the death to cover his retreat. All 80 perished. The Earl lived another year only to be betrayed. The O'Moriarty clan delivered his severed head to Queen Elizabeth. The English responded with scorched earth tactics of their own: martial law, the destruction of Catholic churches, and massive land seizures. With English power tightening its grip, the old Irish way of war began to die, and with it, the age of the Gallowglass. Queen Elizabeth banned their employment. The English no longer trusted the volatile loyalty of mercenaries who once slaughtered entire companies for coin. And so, the Gallowglass faded, from battlefield terrors to fading gravestones and scattered lines in Shakespearean verse. But their legacy is undeniable. For over 300 years, they shaped Irish warfare. They defied empires, ended bloodlines, and stood their ground while others fled. They were blades for hire, but they fought like men possessed. History remembers them not as heroes or villains, but as a force of nature. Brutal, uncompromising, unforgettable, they fought for gold, and they left no survivors.